Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to another rendition of the Big Ten Show, this time Oregon edition. We're going to do a program overview. Y'all liked our program overviews in the past of Purdue, Iowa, etc., Wisconsin. So we have one for the Ducks because the Oregon fans have been clamoring to get on some Big Ten channels and find some content to watch for the Big Ten. So here we are, and we are with Spencer Mclaughlin. Spencer, did I pronounce that right, McLaughlin?
You did indeed. You nailed it. I tell you, most people don't on their first go around. They think that G is a hard G, but it's soft as can be.
All right. Well, I just want, hey, I want to make sure that I pronounce the names correctly. That's one thing I'm a stickler for. So
I love that so much. I tell you, I feel the same way in play-by-play. When I tune into broadcasts and other announcers are commentating on Southern Utah teams whose flag you can see up there, I do play-by-play for them. And when they're in visiting arenas and I'm not there and I hear other announcers mispronounce the name, I just drop my head. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's just the one thing. You got one job. You got one job.
Literally. So, no, but Spencer, thank you so much for joining us. Do you want to tell people where they can find you? I know you mentioned that, but do you want to tell people, what you're doing, all the projects you're working on and stuff?
Yeah, I host Locked On Ducks and Locked On College Football on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, Monday through Friday, all year round. The biggest stories in the greatest sport on planet Earth on one hand and everything you need to know about the Ducks on the other. And I'm the radio and TV play-by-play voice for Southern Utah University in the Western Athletic Conference / the United Athletic Conference on the football side of things. That's an FCS conference that got formed, a merger between the WAC and the ASUN last year. So I try to be anywhere and everywhere that I can. I also do some writing in season about the Ducks over at 750 The Game, their website, which is a radio station back in Portland. So like I said, anywhere and everywhere I can be.
Awesome. We'll put links in the description for all those so y'all can check out his work. But he's doing great stuff. We talked about it in the before the show. So you go check him out over there. And like I said, links in the description. So.
Well, Spencer, you sound like a really, really busy guy. So again, thank you so much for
giving
us this half hour of time just to talk about Oregon. And
I'm not as busy as I sound. I played 18 holes of golf today, and I haven't done a lick of work yet.
That's what the nighttime's for. All right.
Yeah, it is.
Talk about Oregon. Oregon's going to be the first team from the Pac-12 that's going to be coming into the Big Ten that we're kind of be highlighting. So let me ask you a question that we're going to ask all the other teams once we do their shows. Like, what's the feeling like in Eugene? Like, joining this new conference, is there a certain level of excitement? Are you sad that, your old conference affiliation is over? What are the vibes like?
Well, there are two different questions in there. One is how I'm feeling. One is how everybody in Eugene is feeling, and Duck fans writ large. And there are two separate answers. I'll start with the fans. And I think Oregon fans are really excited about where the program, spelled P-R-O-G-R-U-M, per Dan Lanning's pronunciation, is at right now. Lanning going into year 3. The staff is back. Key players are back. Portal class, high school recruiting. Everything has got a lot of momentum as Oregon goes into the Big Ten. I think fans are very focused on Oregon, and it's kind of that FIBU mentality. If everybody remembers when that kind of popped up during the season, I think that's where Oregon fans really are right now. It's a state of, okay, how is Oregon getting better? Is Oregon good? Is Oregon improving here and there? Are they filling key needs? And they're definitely doing that in the high school and recruiting sense. They've got their quarterback situation figured out. The running backs are there, receivers. I can give you a full deep dive on the roster. That might take a little bit too much time of the segment we've got here. But I think Oregon fans are feeling very confident. I think they should be. That's being backed up by a couple of national entities feeling strongly about the Ducks, whether that's FanDuel giving their win total at 10.5 or ESPN's, way too early preseason top 25, having them at number 3. I haven't done a deep dive yet. I think that's the highest preseason poll they've had in quite some time. I know it's not necessarily official yet because it's way too early, is what I saw. But still, that sort of hype is where Oregon fans are at. And I think as it pertains to the Big Ten, I'll be honest, I think Oregon fans are really indifferent. I think there are some who are excited that Oregon's got the stability and that they're staying in they're going to be in one of the Power 2 conferences. They're not being left behind like Oregon State and Washington State are and everything like that. And that's all good and fine, but it's not at the top of their minds. It's about the football and what the product's going to be on the field. And I think that they have every reason to be optimistic and excited about what they can do this year. But I mean, as Oregon goes into the Big Ten, I think most Oregon fans see it as, well, kind of had to for survival, right? Once USC and UCLA jump ship, the money is going to be better. Even though it's a half share in the long run, it's about what they would have gotten in if they'd stayed in the Pac-12. But you're in the Big Ten, you still got a linear television package, and so you're going to be able to watch the games and everything like that has gone on. I think they're pretty over it and just kind of like, okay, well, who's up next? And looking at some big matchups against against teams like Ohio State or Michigan, right? So I don't think there's a huge swell of chatter about that. Now, me personally, I hate this crap. I hate this crap more than I can describe, especially in a media appropriate way here on the show, because I'm very much a traditionalist. I am not opposed to change when it is required. I think college football scheduling needs to change. I thought the NIL in, what its actual original purest intent and form is, I thought that needed to change. But I am not someone who says, yeah, bring out all the changes, just move all this stuff around. It's great and everything. No, I hate the move. Like, I'm happy that Oregon's found a home and that they're in the Big Ten rather than being an independent or in the Big 12 or ACC or anything like that. That's great and good and fine. But I'm a traditionalist in the sense that if change is not required, I do not want change to take place. And that's what we've done with realignment. It wasn't required. USC just said, we want to get a little greedy here. And UCLA said, well, we're going to go along for the ride because we're going to bring the whole television market. And then the Pac-12 wasn't able to get a deal that was good enough to keep the league together. But like, I grew up with that conference.
Yeah.
I grew up watching Oregon play Washington State and Cal and the Arizona schools. And there's history there that you can't create in a microwave. You can't do it in a season. It takes a long time. And I think it's just extra special for me because I'm a fairly young guy, so I remember all this stuff, when I first became an Oregon fan around 5 or 6 years old and just watching these teams and growing up with them. And now I'm an adult, sort of, and I don't like that it's just gone. Yeah. It's like the last 2 decades, we threw it away for what? Mm-hmm. Like some money that's never going to come my way. I'm puzzled by the people who are in the camp of, this is so great, it's so much more money. I'm like, hold up, are you getting paid?
Yeah.
Are you getting, like, when people say, oh my gosh, this is a great game, it had so many people watching, I'm like, wow, that's amazing. Are you a network executive at Fox? Yeah. Because if you're not, this doesn't affect you in any way, shape, or form. What affects you is the product that's being put on the field. And I'm not saying there aren't exciting elements. Playing Ohio State and Michigan or Penn State, like, yeah, those would be awesome games. But, for the random conference games, I don't care about playing Indiana. Yeah. I don't care about playing Purdue. I don't give a rip about any of that stuff.
Illinois out there.
Yeah, or Illinois or Nebraska. No, I'm just. But I just look at those teams and I'm like, okay, whatever. Like Michigan State's going to come to Autzen Stadium in a classic Big Ten showdown this year. I'm like, I don't care. If I'm going to play a below average team, guess what? I'd rather it be Cal. Why? Because there's history with Cal. So
I agree. It's, for me, it's one of those where, college football is one of my favorite sports by far, but I think everything is happening so fast that a couple of years from now, the casuals and the people who really, not so much the casual, the purists, are going to kind of look around and be like, this sucks. Like right now, it's all the excitement of the P2 teams. Illinois, obviously, I'm lucky that we just happen to be a founder of the Big Ten, because otherwise, for the most part, our program would probably not be included in this whole revampment going on. But, for me, it was always the beauty of college football was the regional rivalries.
Yes.
Playing the team once or twice a year, going to their home one year, coming to your place the next. So I agree with you. It's one of those, it's good for business, I guess, and it's great for content, I'm sure. But I think as a fan, we're all going to kind of reflect in a couple of years and be like, I think this was the second best option.
Yeah, I mean, if you can't generate content without realignment stuff for a show when you're talking about a specific team, you're not very good at creating content. Yeah. There are more interesting things to talk about than all this movement and whatnot. Yep. But that's the way it's the world is. I'm not someone who's happy with it, obviously. I'm also not someone who's like, I'm never watching college football again.
Right.
Like, I hate the 12-team playoffs too. I'm not going to just not watch or not cover it on my shows or not talk about it, because I get that people are interested in it. But fundamentally, do I like it? No, I do not.
Yep. And, to your point, like I kind of understand where you're coming from, Nebraska moving from the Big 12. It's just like it's a restart essentially. And like you said, like I'm from Texas. So growing up a Nebraska fan in Texas, that rivalry is deep rooted for me. And then you go over to the Big 10 and they have this Nebraska Iowa rivalry. Me not being from Nebraska, that's not built in for me. Right. So I kind of had to, force these rivalries a little bit in some of these instances. And it's just not the same. So
you can't force a rivalry.
You can't.
You can't do it. It has to have roots.
Exactly.
Like a tree, right? You can't just stick a tree in the ground. It's got to have roots. It's got to grow, and it's got to sprout over a long period of time until it is a wonderfully majestic product to look at and admire. But, there's this famous sign that was held up at the Washington State-Oregon State game in Pullman last year, and it was, Pac-2 United, 108 years of history. And I thought about that, and I was like, that's crazy. 108 years of people going to games, teams playing, coaches coming and going, little stories and tidbits and all this sort of stuff. And we just threw it away for some more money. Like, okay.
Well, we can move into a little happier subject. Speaking of growing roots for the future, Dan Lanning, right?
Yes.
We have to talk about Dan Lanning. Dan Lanning, 37-year-old, a rising star in the game of college football, 22-5, 15-3 in conference, top 10 last year. One of my questions, and one of the things I've noticed, is when you have a guy like a Dan Lanning, 37 years old, young up and coming, every job that opens up, he's a list. He's on that list. And every single job that's going to arise next year, he's going to be on that list, just because of who he is. Do you think that's going to be an issue moving forward, dealing with that each and every offseason? Or do you think it's something Dan Lanning he's stuck here, he's going to stay here, and he's going to make that known each and every time, just in terms of the longevity of the program?
Keep recording, but just give me one moment, just because I happen to have this on hand.
Yeah, there we go. The grass is damn green in Eugene. All right. So I guess
I'm so glad you asked that question, because literally I had that shirt on to record a show last night, and I looked over the couch and I was like, oh, wow, it's right there. This is the perfect way to answer the question. So that particular stunt on my part aside, I think that Dan Lanning this offseason not going to Alabama, which I know for a fact they were interested in him, was an offer ever put in front of him? I have no idea. I don't know if he interviewed. I can't attest to that. I do have it on good authority that Alabama wanted to go after him, which means at the very least, there was a phone call to his agent, which got back to him. Are you interested here? And he decided, nope, I want to stay with Oregon. If you are willing, as the head coach of a program, to not entertain Alabama when you are coming from the SEC in your coaching tree, or in your coaching history rather, that is a testament to the fact that you are actually here to stay. Yeah. Because the only job that I can now think of in which he would leave Oregon is Georgia. And where's Kirby going? Nowhere.
Right.
He's going nowhere fast. And so Lanning didn't even mean to make that a quotable T-shirt worthy line when he said the grass is damn green in Eugene. Yeah. He didn't mean to, but Oregon fans turned it into that anyway. But that has been the message from him. Yeah. And look, coaches have projected about, whether somewhere's a destination job or anything. Look at Kalen DeBoer at Washington, for instance. You look at his introductory press conference. His statement was, yeah, this is absolutely a destination job for me. Well, 2 years later, he's done. Yeah. And he's going to be the head coach at Alabama. But Lanning is backing up his words with his actions, right? Auburn came open last year. Lanning was a target of theirs. Never went anywhere. They got an extension signed. Texas A&M came open, and he made a very decisive statement, which was, there is a 0% chance that I will be, the next head coach at Texas A&M, or that I will be coaching somewhere else. Alabama came open. Once again, like, those are high-profile jobs. That's not SEC schools like Mississippi State or Ole Miss or Vandy or, teams that are perennially, at least in the last several years, towards the bottom. Mm-hmm. Those are legit jobs. Now, Auburn is definitely the lowest caliber of those three. I would think, just because they're number 2 program in the state of Alabama. You got to deal with Crimson Tide, but now Saban's not there. So it might be a little more attractive, but still, those are high profile jobs. And Lanning staying with Oregon is a testament to the fact that he wants to be there, and he's not just talking the talk, he's walking the walk in that sense. And so it's really comforting for Oregon fans to know, okay, this guy does want to stay here, and we'll have to drag him away kicking and screaming. And there's no job that is inherently going to be tied to him, except for maybe Georgia because he was a DC there. Because unlike Mario Cristobal, who had a dream job at Miami, or Willie Taggart, whose dream job was FSU, there is no job. He played at William and Jewell College, a Division II school in Missouri. So, I think it's great for Oregon fans that he's someone who really wants to stick around and build a national championship contending team, and he can do just that.
To your point, yeah, like with the resources that are there, with everything that Oregon has, I mean, they have the NIL, they have the facilities, they have everything you could possibly want as a head coach to build a team. He has everything he needs there. I would say probably the only threat to losing him is maybe the NFL. Him going to be a
No, I don't think he's an NFL guy.
I don't think he is either. I think if in the long shot that he does leave, I think they're the type that can throw money at him, because I don't, like you said, I don't see anything on the college landscape that could interest him enough to pull him from Oregon. I think the only shot would be that. And even then, I think that's very slim to none. So I
haven't even entertained that thought as a potential concern. He's so committed to recruiting and works his butt off so much at it, and his entire staff does. Guys who are like that are not typically NFL targets.
Yeah, 100%.
Because that means your roots are going to stay in college football. Kalen DeBoer, for instance, if he goes to Alabama and strings together, if he goes 9-3 this year and then goes like 11-2, 12-1, makes playoff noise and whatnot, that is somebody who could want to go to the NFL, right?
Yeah.
Because two of his staff members just did. Why? They don't really like to recruit. Chip Kelly doesn't like to recruit. And I think it is that simple of a calculation. If you don't like to recruit, and if it's known that you're not big in that particular realm, you have a desire, at least, it seems, to go to the NFL. Chip wanted to go to the NFL, couldn't get it. He said, I'd rather be an OC. I just want to coach ball. Jeff Hafley, Boston College, wanted to go be a DC in the NFL. Jim Harbaugh, he's done with the NCAA for a number of reasons.
Yep.
Recruiting in NIL, maybe less of a part of it, more the NCAA in that sense. I don't think someone who's as dominant of a recruiter as Dan Lanning is interested in the NFL. I don't think that is where his aspirations lie. I think he wants to build a national championship winner at Oregon, and if he does, we'll be eternally grateful.
Yep.
So a lot of Big Ten fans may not be familiar with Oregon and their program. Of course, we all know who Dan Lanning is, and one of the, if not up and coming coaches in the league, just already one of the best coaches in the country. Give us maybe just spend a minute or two talking about what you think are his strengths and what you think right now. Obviously, he's a younger coach. He still kind of needs to work on.
Yeah, I think recruiting is a great strength for him. I also think that improvement was demonstrative from year one to year two, both for himself and for his team. And that is a real strong couple of feathers in his cap as they go forward, trying to compete in the Big Ten and get to the 12-team playoff and whatnot. I think that that's the biggest thing you want to see from a coach, because in year one, there were some mistakes. And in year two, you can argue there were mistakes. Not taking points before the half against Washington on what would have been a chip shot field goal. And then you lose that game by 3 points, and maybe Camden Lewis makes that kick because it's to win rather than to tie the game. That's a much, it's still a high pressure spot, but maybe it feels that I don't know, right? I don't know how all of that plays out, but I think that, with fourth down calls and field goals and that sort of thing, he has definitely found a better groove. And I think that that's part of learning and growing and being a head coach, but there aren't really that many weaknesses. Like, Washington is really his only real weakness. He had a bad game, a horrible game coaching, his entire staff did, against Oregon State in 2022 when they blew that lead in Corvallis without Oregon State throwing the ball. Like, that sort of stuff was unacceptable. But guess what? In year two, that never happened, right? And that, to me, shows the growth that was needed on his side of the ball that he comes from defensively, because it was just a lack of adjustments. There were a lack of adjustments And I didn't see that from Oregon this year, where I felt like, man, they're just not adjusting. They're just not doing different stuff and whatnot. I think that he showed real growth, and I think that's really, really good. I think there's still another level, game planning and execution and whatnot. But the only guy he couldn't get through this year was Kalen DeBoer. That's the only guy that beat Dan Lanning this year. He went 2-0 against Kyle Whittingham, who's a damn good football coach.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is a testament to what he's really capable of. It's just DeBoer is very, very good.
Yeah. And you talked about his recruiting ability, and we can get into that a little bit, not only in just the recruiting of the high school players, the transfer portal as well. They combined for, I think, the number 3 or number 2 overall class combined out of the 2, which was big time, especially with some of the losses. Albeit it's not a huge class of people going to the combine. You'll have 7 players going to the combine, of course: Bo Nix, Bucky Irving, Troy Franklin, Jackson Powers Johnson, Brandon Dorless, Kyrie Jackson, and Evan Williams. Those are the 7. And, in this class too, it seems like he recovered a lot of needs based on who they're losing, especially the secondary. The secondary was much worse in 2022. It improved a little bit in 2023, but I think it finished kind of the low point of the defense, 63rd, I think, overall ranked in passing defense. They were 11th in scoring defense. The TFLs were at 97th, 67th in turnover gain. So looking through the class, probably the transfer portal is going to be the number one, answer here. What do you think, besides the quarterback position, is the biggest improvement, and what do you feel like was the biggest need that was filled? Because I think it was Jamar Muhammad, just based on the fact that he is a very sticky cornerback. He's very similar to Kyrie Jackson. Kyrie Jackson's a very much a press man type of coverage guy. And, 34 tackles, 5 TFLs, 2 sacks, 3 interceptions, 7 pass deflected for Kyrie Jackson. What do you think? Do you think Jabbar Muhammad can fill that role? And who do you think is the most important out of this transfer portal class?
Yeah, I think Muhammad is up there. I wouldn't overlook Evan Stewart at wide receiver. Troy Franklin was huge for the Ducks. He had the best individual receiving season in the history of Oregon football. That is not hyperbolic in any way. He set the single season record for touchdowns and receiving yards. He had the receptions record until he opted out of the bowl game. Tez Johnson played, and Tez Johnson passed him, because Johnson's going to return for the Ducks in 2024, which is a huge returning element for Oregon's offense. He is a dynamic and explosive slot receiver for Oregon, and Will Stein used him very, very well in the offense last season, and he was good in the return game. So I wouldn't overlook Evan Stewart, but it's hard to not look at Jabbar Muhammad and think that that's kind of the crown jewel of the class. I mean, I'm as high on Troy Franklin as anybody. I've watched him dominate over the last couple of years, and in the Pac-12 championship game. Now, Franklin got the better of him in their first meeting in Seattle, but you saw what Muhammad was capable of when he had the clamps on Troy Franklin in that Pac-12 title game. Just straight up. And like you said, he's a very sticky corner, but he also, I think, has excellent ball skills, and there's a refinement to his game. And I think that Dan Lanning, Tosh Lupoy, and co-DC Chris Hampton are going to have a really, really fun time with him on the perimeter, and he's someone who you can leave on an island. So if you don't feel as good about your other cornerback position, which, they brought in an All-American Conference transfer in Cam Alexander. They've got Jalil Florence coming back, who I think is, when healthy, an all-conference caliber corner. They've brought in a couple of safeties or nickel guys in, Brandon Johnson from Duke, Kobe Savage from Kansas State, all conference guys. And they bring back Tysheem Johnson, who was all Pac-12 honorable mention a season ago. So I really like what they've done in the secondary. I think that it has the chance to be a better unit than it was last season. Going from a guy like Steve Stevens, who, was a veteran, had a solid, really good career with the Ducks. Never, I don't think, even really came close to sniffing an all-conference mention. Kobe Savage is going to come in and upgrade that sort of position. You add Brandon Johnson in there and you say, okay, you lost Evan Williams, who had a great year for the Ducks, but you bring in 2 guys that were all power or all conference caliber at the power level, and I think that unit overall can be improved. You do have to remember, though, and this is going to be the challenging part for Oregon's defense next year, your secondary can only be good if your defensive line can get pressure.
Yep.
And that was part of the problem in the Pac-12 championship game. There was no pressure on Michael Penix. Yep. Even when Oregon blitzed, their pickups and max protection concepts were just beating Oregon, and they weren't able to consistently pressure Penix. And when that's the case, guess what? He's going to tear you. He's going to tear you up. Now, is Oregon going to face a passing offense like that next year? No, not even Ohio State. because Will Howard is not Michael Penix, and he doesn't have 3 NFL receivers on the outside. He'll have good ones, but it won't be on that level. Like, that was a unique situation for the Ducks and tough for a lot of teams to get through. But you look at how Michigan slowed down Washington. Well, they dominated up front. They pressured Penix, and he was definitely off in that national title game, which I got to tell you, as an Oregon fan, was frustrating as hell to watch. It's like, oh, you do miss throws, just not against Oregon. That's cool. That's cool. I respect the heck out of Penix. He's a super nice guy. I met him at the Pac-12 title game. Like, he's an awesome guy, but tormented the Ducks for the last 2 years. And every time he missed a throw when a guy was open, I just threw my hands up in just the most frustrated manner. Like, you couldn't have done this on December 1st. You waited until this moment. Really?
It never works out that way, does it?
I know. It feels like it doesn't. But yeah, I think the secondary is the element that they have upgraded the most, with Muhammad and Johnson and Alexander in there, and then returners like Florence and Manning and Tyshim Johnson. I like what the back end looks like. I think it is better than last year. The question will be how that front 4 looks, because they're losing their top 4 defensive tackles. They bring in an all Big 12 selection in Jamari Caldwell from Houston. Great addition on the interior. But you need some young guys to step up in there, whether that's 5-star true freshman Aiden Breland, or I guess he technically lost a star on 24/7 recently, which, like, okay, whatever. But I'm not too worried. Mateo Uyunglele did too. He played in every game for the Ducks last season and was basically a starter. So I think that they're going to have some young guys step up. I don't know who that's going to be. I am fascinated to watch that as spring football unfolds, but I think that for the Ducks, their defense should be at least as good, if not better, than last year.
Yeah, and just to so we can pull it up here just for the people to see. So this is the transfer portal class right here, and Jabbar Ahmed, of course, up top, and then you see the rest here. So, very, very good overall class. And, just looking at through the numbers right now, y'all got the number 4 cornerback, number 2 wide receiver, number 2 defensive lineman, number 3 quarterback in Dante Moore, number 12 quarterback in Dylan Gabriel, and Matthew Bedford, the number 14 offensive tackle. So, yeah, just a really
He's going to play guard
all around. He's going to play guard.
Is he listed as a tackle?
Yeah, where I saw it, yeah. He was listed
started at guard at Indiana, I'm pretty sure. He projects to play guard at Oregon.
Yeah.
He'll be the right guard. And I think the rankings being higher are great. You do need to take them with a little grain of salt, just because Dante Moore is a higher rated quarterback than Dylan Gabriel in the portal.
Yeah.
Who's starting next year for Oregon? It's not Dante Moore. Yeah, it's gonna be Dylan Gabriel. But it is indicative of what Oregon fans are feeling right now, which is there's a lot of incoming talent. There are some big-time returners, whether that's Jordan Birch on the defensive line, former 5-star recruit, Jeffrey Basso, who's going into his 4th year and is the captain of the defense, Tyshim Johnson, honorable mention safety, Jalil Florence, who will probably start at one outside corner position once he gets back from injury, Dante Manning, who's been a nice depth piece sort of corner for the Ducks for the last couple of years. If those are the guys that are leading the way, blending with the newcomers, Justin Jacobs at linebacker as well, Oregon could have a really, really good defense.
Absolutely.
Obviously, there's very high expectations for the Oregon Ducks this upcoming season, and not many programs are able to get in a quarterback like Dylan Gabriel to transfer in, and then have another former 5-star quarterback who played for a conference rival come in and agree to essentially sit behind him. Now, again, you're the envy of a lot of teams in the nation, but let's say, for whatever reason, Oregon gets off to a slower start or stumbles out of the opening, and Gabriel struggles a little bit. Do you think having the pressure of Dante Moore behind him can kind of have him looking over his shoulder and maybe not playing as well as he needs to be playing? Because obviously you guys need to be clicking on all cylinders. Our conference is going to be pretty tough next year. It's you guys in Ohio State going back and forth with each other. So do you think there's a slight cause of concern that if you guys don't start the way that you're supposed to be starting, that that QB room could be a little trouble?
It would have to be some horrifically bad play from Dylan Gabriel, because Dante Moore needs a year. He needed a year at UCLA. He wasn't able to take it. The opportunity was there for him to play. He clearly wasn't ready for that moment. He didn't go into the most ideal situation there, but he's in it right now at Oregon. He's got a veteran sixth-year quarterback to sit behind. He's got a quarterback-friendly offense in, Will Stein is his offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach, who's got a tremendous track record with QBs over the last couple of seasons. Bo Nix just set the NCAA completion percentage record. Frank Alexander, I think was the guy's name, the year before at I feel like I'm misremembering that name, but the quarterback that he had, Frank Harris is his name, at UTSA a couple of years ago. He was an all-conference player, one of the leading passers in the country. I think he's in a great situation, but he's got the physical tools to be, I mean, a big-time quarterback. He was a big-time recruit for a reason. Oregon wanted him originally for a reason, but he's someone who can go to the league, and he's got those sorts of traits, but he's got to learn everything else. He's got to learn how to protect the ball. He's got to learn how to read defenses. He's got to learn, what is needed from him in a given situation. There were times last year where Chip Kelly, would go for it on fourth down and Dante Moore would take a sack, and then he'd call him over to the sideline and be like, hey, I don't care if you throw an interception. Throw the ball. Yeah. Like, you're not giving anybody any sort of chance. There is a 0% chance of completing a pass if you take a sack. There's at least a 1% chance if you were to just chuck it up, right? Those sorts of things. He didn't get a real graceful learning period because UCLA had a really good roster last year, so they were trying to win. So he wasn't really given that opportunity to fully go out there and develop and learn and sit because they were trying to make the most of what they had, and it was just, they were caught in between. And I think that for Dante Moore, it certainly should be a comfort at some level for Duck fans to have a guy as a backup quarterback that has starting experience. Yeah. But he's not going to push Dylan Gabriel in a serious way. I think Gabriel's leash is pretty long.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty darn long. Now, is it as long as other quarterbacks in the conference? No, clearly not. Because how many other backup quarterbacks have started and won Power 5 football games before?
Yep.
Not very many. How many are as talented as Dante Moore? Not very many. So from that standpoint, if 10 is the longest leash you could possibly have, right? And that's what Bo Nix had a year ago. His leash would have been 10. Gabriel's is probably at about a 9.
Yeah.
Because Dante Moore is there. But I think that Moore went to Oregon to sit, learn, and develop. And I think that's exactly what the game plan is going to be.
Yeah, to your point about the quarterback situation, most successful coaches, when they bring in a 5-star guy, just in general with their quarterback room, and they have a guy who is quote unquote the guy, they all kind of just mentally reset that when it comes back into, spring and fall, because they're going to say everybody's battling for the starting role. That just kind of breeds competition and just makes everybody, have to fight back for their spots. And, that's the way to bring the most out of guys, is the competition aspect. So, I guess we can get into a little bit of what we talked about earlier with the over under win totals coming out and stuff like that. 10.5, right, for Oregon. And for full transparency, me and Sonny did our power rankings. We both had Oregon at number 2, right behind Ohio State, of course. So looking at the schedule, and I'll bring it up here in just a second. What is your take on the 10.5 over under, and where do you think the Ducks may fall? I'm thinking that it might be a little bit over though.
Well, I think it's a sign of great respect for Oregon and the moves that they have made. Their schedule, that's the 2023 schedule.
Oh, my fault.
But I think that Oregon is in a position to compete at a very high level and win at least 10 games next year. Now, that win total is set correctly at 10.5. And I think it's reflective of a couple things. Number one, Oregon's had a great offseason. I mean, a great offseason. Number 2, they have key returners. Number 3, they've got coaching staff continuity. How many places can say they're bringing back their offensive and defensive coordinators, their co-defensive coordinator, and their head coach? Not very many. I mean, Ohio State can't say that. Michigan can't say that. Washington can't say that. Yep. Go look around the highest win totals in the Big Ten or anywhere in the country. Yep. There aren't many places. Georgia can say that, I'm pretty sure, because I think Georgia kept their offensive coordinator around. But and Georgia, by the way, also has a win total of 10.5, and nobody is over 10.5 in the Power 4 conferences across the country. And Oregon is definitely going to have some difficult games. And I'm not sitting here predicting an undefeated season, though they're capable of doing so. Getting Ohio State at home is huge. The non-conference slate should be 3-0. But getting Ohio State at home is really big, and having Michigan on the road instead, because Michigan's going to be the weaker of those two teams pretty clearly. Doesn't mean it'll be easy.
Yeah.
But it is definitely going to be a really, really tough situation to play Ohio State and Michigan on the same schedule. Now, fortunately, they missed USC. They play UCLA instead. Yeah. And I think UCLA is going to have a rough, rough year. They just hired their running backs coach as their head coach because he is a UCLA guy and is a player's coach and he's passionate about the program and everything. I don't even know if they hired him to be the long-term solution. I think he is a stopgap sort of coach. Michigan State, Oregon knows how dangerous Jonathan Smith is as a coach. The team is not going to be ready to compete there just yet. So I think that Washington can always pose a challenge, but I definitely would not pick Oregon win fewer than 10 games. I would probably pick 11 before I picked 10. But I think 10.5 is a really, really tricky number there. But I think it's a testament that the only teams that have a win total of 10.5, or that are in double figures are Texas, Oregon, Ohio State, and Georgia.
Yep.
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's reflective of what Oregon fans are feeling, which is this is a national title capable team.
Yep. And the backside of the schedule, not too terrible. I mean, you got Michigan in November in Ann Arbor.
Maryland to Autzen Stadium.
Yeah, because you got to play.
What Terrapins fan? Just as a quick side note, what Terrapins fan is going across the country?
None of them.
To see Oregon,
that's just for y'all to enjoy.
That's the other thing that sucks for fans. If you want to go to games, you're not going to go all the way across the country to do that.
Yep.
Like at Purdue, how many Oregon fans are going to show up to West Lafayette?
I'm not even going there. In this conference.
I mean, goodness, the Illini are going to odds. I mean,
how do you feel?
Give me a break.
I will say something. There's nothing like saying welcome to the Big Ten than having to go to Madison in mid-November. So that'll be fun to watch.
That's what I'm saying. The cold weather.
That's gonna be a tough game, and you have no idea what the weather's going to be like. So that's going to be we're in the Big Ten moment.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I think that you'll get fans like Oregon had some fans that went to Ohio State in 2021. I'm sure fans will go to Michigan. But like all these other games, are you going to go to Madison in November? No.
I wouldn't.
You're just not. Whereas if the Pac-12 had stayed together, that game could be like, I don't know, Arizona State, which who doesn't want to go to Tempe in November? Place is fantastic.
Do you think the cold weather is a little bit overplayed in terms of like the way people are judging the Pac-12 teams playing in the Midwest in November, or because I think it's more of just a grind type of deal. I don't necessarily think it fits it on this schedule, but just grinding through those late games when you have a stretch against some tough teams and really, really cold weather environments. Do you think that's something just Oregon will be able to kind of? And I think Oregon is good enough. They're one of those teams that they're going to have to beat teams at that state to win the national championship. So, but how do y'all feel about that coming into the conference? And do you think that will be an issue?
I don't think it'll be an issue at all. I think the way that Dan Lanning and his staff have recruited the trenches is really, really good. And it's not as if Oregon is unaccustomed to playing in cold weather. It's not warm in Eugene. It's not like the Big Ten. I'm not saying that. Though Pullman is. Pullman. If you go to Pullman late in the year, that's Big Ten weather. Yeah, that is cold, snowy, frigid, all that sort of stuff. It's frozen. Yeah, it's a frozen tundra up there, but it'll definitely be an adjustment. But Big Ten teams, I always hear like, well, our Pac-12 teams ready for Big Ten defenses. I don't know, are Big Ten defenses ready for Pac-12 offenses? Mm-hmm. Like, have you seen an offense like Lincoln Riley's before? Well, USC is not physical enough. They're not okay, I think that's a valid criticism. If Iowa plays USC, where are you leaning there?
Yeah.
Are you going heavy on, Iowa's defense? Well, Iowa's offense, USC's defense. It's like, is Iowa's defense good enough to hold USC to, 7 points? Really? Okay. Good luck. It's like that line in the Dark Knight when Morgan Freeman, the guy comes and discovers that Bruce Wayne is Batman, and he says, let me get this straight. You think that your client, one of the wealthiest, most powerful men in the world, is secretly a vigilante who spends his nights beating criminals to a pulp with his bare fists, and your plan is to blackmail this person? Good luck.
Well done. Well done. I want to just clip that and post it.
You may do so, by all means. Just make it clear I was not trying to impersonate Morgan Freeman's voice directly. It's too silky. It's way too silky.
You sounded just like him. I would have been fooled. So,
well, I'm a huge movies guy. Huge movies guy.
So, Sonny, go ahead and what is your overall take in regards to Oregon and the overall landscape of the Big Ten, and then any questions you may have for Spencer before we let him go. I know he's got his show to get to.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see, what we just kind of talked about, Pac-12 fans saying, well, are you guys ready for our offenses? And Big Ten fans saying, well, you've never played a real defense before. I think that's one of the most exciting parts of the 2024 season, that a lot of these questions are going to be answered. And it'll be nice to see actually on the field. Like we joke around, but it actually, I'm looking forward to seeing Oregon play the Badgers in Madison in mid-November. Because, especially if Wisconsin plays to the level that they're capable of playing, Oregon's going to be favored, but it's going to be a good test. Yeah. So, not so I personally still kind of have Ohio State favored over Oregon, but I think Oregon right now is one of the hottest brands in all of college football. So I'm certainly glad that they're coming into the Big Ten. And, I'm really looking forward to just seeing just all this blend together and see what happens.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of fascinating elements to it. I think Ohio State and Oregon are 1A, 1B in the Big Ten. You can put them there however you'd like. Is it ignorance is bliss for Oregon in the new conference? Or is it, hey, you've got something to learn here, to go win a game at Camp Randall in late November, right? All that stuff is new and different. But I think Oregon's schedule shakes out pretty solidly. I think, as I said, it's huge to have Ohio State at home and Michigan on the road, because playing both of them, well, that's not great. But then you miss USC, and UCLA should be a fairly easy win even on the road. So, I fully expect Oregon to start at least 5-0 next year. I don't think they could drop a game, or they shouldn't drop a game until Ohio State is probably a coin flip, go either way game, even having it at Autzen Stadium. But you look at their schedule and it just feels very manageable. They get the bye before the Washington game, and Washington won't be the same team, though still should be solid. Jed Fish is a really good coach, and he and Lanning have gone against each other once before, and Oregon got the better of him. But he's done a good job to put together some talent in Seattle, and Oregon knows now to never overlook the Huskies. But frankly, that's like one of the biggest things on the schedule. Oregon's just got to be Washington, man. We're just tired of hearing it from Husky fans. They got all the glory and all the accolades from this season that Oregon could have had. They were good enough to have and get, and they just didn't execute. That's what it came down to. And I think going back to what Lanning can improve upon and such, I thought offensively that game plan was not good. They ran the ball once in their first 6 plays.
Yep.
Michigan ran the ball 5 times in their first 6 plays, I think, and they scored a touchdown.
Yep.
That's just poor game plan. But those are the sorts of things that, hey, you make adjustments, and when you're a young head coach, you got room to grow. I feel great about where Oregon's at. I'm interested at some level, and I hope the next 6.5 months fly by, gentlemen.
Yeah, so do we. Spencer, last thing too, though. 2016, Tommy Armstrong, Oregon in Lincoln. Do you remember that game?
I do remember that game quite well.
Where they all were going for 2-point conversions every time.
Yes.
And biting you on the butt.
Yes.
That
was my freshman year of college. Let me tell you, I didn't enjoy that game.
I did, but it was the last basically good memory I have, essentially, because that was the last time Nebraska had a winning record. So welcome to the Big Ten, and hopefully it's a good sign next time we see y'all in Lincoln. So
yeah, absolutely. I like the 2017 game better, when Oregon declared themselves back, only to have Herbert get hurt 2 weeks later and go 7-5. But hey, we've grown a lot since then.
It took everything we had to beat you on that game. It took the whole crowd and everything. That was a tough one, and I don't expect Nebraska to be competing with Oregon for the next couple of years. So we don't have to worry about that one.
I talked on Locked On College Football recently that Nebraska is the most interesting team in the sport.
Hey, I'll take that. I like that.
I think they're the most interesting team because Matt Rule in year 2, in his 2 college jobs, averages 5 more wins than the previous year. He went 5-7 last year.
Yep.
Are we prepared for Nebraska to maybe go 10-2? Could they at least be 8-4? I think it comes down to Dylan Raiola. But if they could at least just go like 8-4, 9-3.
I looked at our schedule. I picked 8 wins, just trying to be conservative. I got 8 wins, 8-4. I think it's perfectly reasonable considering, came out 5-3 last year, ended up 5-7.
Just try to find a way to win a 1 possession game, and you guys will be just fine.
Yep. So I won't. Sonny's getting frustrated over there talking about Nebraska. He's not a fan.
The show's going to go on for another half hour if you get us to talk about Nebraska. I've said this before. I'm on the under 7.5 this year, but because I don't want to piss my co-host off, I'm going to wait till
too late.
The offseason is always owned by Huskers fans. So, what can I say?
Offseason champs, baby. All right. Well, I think that'll do it for us here. We've gotten off topic on Nebraska. So, Spencer, thank you so much for stopping by, man. Really enjoyed the conversation. Again, tell the people where you can find you and what's going on with you.
Locked On Ducks, Locked On College Football, Monday through Friday on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcasts all year round. Everything you need to know about the Ducks and the biggest stories in the greatest sport on planet Earth. And guys, great to be on with you. It was a fun chat. Hopefully everybody out there enjoys.
Yes, sir. All right. Well, if you like what we're doing here, please consider liking and subscribing. We're going to keep these program overviews coming for every team. If you're a fan of the Big Ten, if you're a fan of any Big Ten teams or just a fan of college football, please join and subscribe and leave your comments and let us know what you think of Oregon and what you think of the Big Ten in the future. So that'll do it for us here. Again, thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next video. Peace.